Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto raised by Hanzo found love in Ino, and a growing harem. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto groaned as he finally got out from underneath the tackling fangirl Mirai. How utterly annoying this was. He was praying to Kami or someone who had a heart that he wasn't on a team with her. As if this celebration couldn't get worse, his feeling of impending doom became much more aware of the presence of more females approaching. This is when Naruto grabbed hold of Genshin by the collar of his vest and brought him down to eye level, glaring angrily at his foster father. "What the hell are you doing to me? I don't need this on my first night back. This is more annoying than watching you flirt with my grandmother's assistant when we ran into them that time." Naruto growled as he began to start shaking Genshin violently. Fortunately for him, Rin stepped in, prying Naruto's hands away from Genshin's neck. "Now cut it out, you two. Genshin, you know Naruto likes female attention in small doses. Now cut it out." The brunette Kunoichi barked at her husband before twisting his ear, causing him to howl in mild pain. Naruto smirked confidently, seeing the bad influence in his life getting punished. He confidently turned and prepared to walk off to find something to drink, but as he turned, his lips ended up planted on another set. He stepped back, his face going red as the tips of Rekka's hair without the use of her henge, red. The person on the other end was none other than Sarutobi Sayuki, another of the dreaded army of fangirls. Naruto was now scared shitless. He accidentally kissed the Hokage's granddaughter. That wasn't a good thing. Of course, the two young shinobi were too busy blushing. The other girls, who were present in the room, had one thought running through their heads: kill Sayuki, for it was the very thing they all coveted, Naruto's first kiss. "Hello Naruto-kun. Congratulations on your passing," the brunette girl said, trying to change the subject to end the embarrassment of the scene. Sarutobi Sayuki was a slender girl. She showed all the characteristics of her clan, the ape-like characteristics being the basis. She wore black cargo pants, a black denim jacket, and a really tight-fitting tank top. This was of course to Naruto's approval because she was showing what she was working with. Her hair, on the other hand, was tied up in a high ponytail, letting her bangs do whatever they felt like. Right behind her was the gorilla-like Asuma. This caused Naruto to be more afraid. Arigato Sayuki-chan, the surprisingly bashful blonde shinobi responded. "Nice to see you, Ginukami, Silver Wolf." The son of the Sandame chimed as he waved at Genshin walking around Naruto and Sayuki. This caused Naruto to exhale in relief. Genshin managed to stop laughing at Naruto long enough to greet Asuma with a light punch to the shoulder. "Ya no. I always thought I would have a chance with Kurenai once you left, but her and Kakashi got together. Who woulda thunk it?" the Tanjunin stated as his teeth kept a tight grip on his cancer stick. Genshin and Rin just gaped in shock of what they had heard. "You must be messing with us." Then again, Kakashi was without new smut, looked like it was old. The silver-haired Junin responded as he rubbed his chin and mused with the thought of getting his friend in trouble. "Do it and I will make you go on a date with Shinka." The brunette threatened with her eyes closed. Genshin grinned nervously and chuckled in the same manner. Asuma cringed at what was suggested. No man in the village was crazy enough to date the pyromaniac. Her idea of cooking was to exhale fire on whatever she was trying to cook. Only Genshin was man enough to date her. She was a scary lady who you didn't want angry. Genshin should teach Naruto the dangers of women, but when it came down to it, he figured Naruto would learn on his own. Of course, a certain tomboy was fuming more than the others over the fact that Naruto's first kiss was with Sayuki. Ima was clenching her fists angrily as she watched Naruto flirt with Sayuki. "Not like you have a chance. I'm sure Naruto-kun doesn't like girls who are just another of the guys. The prim and somewhat proper triplet quietly said with a vicious look on her face. Are you trying to say Naruto-kun isn't my type? The tomboy responded angrily with a glare aimed at her sister. Kako was busy laughing haughtily as her sister became infuriated. If the work boot fits, she began, but before she could finish the insult her braid was pulled harshly, causing her to crash to the floor. For the last time, Miss Prissy Pants. I'm not gay. A vein was appearing in Ima's forehead as she glared angrily at her sister. Mirai was giggling at this until she was grabbed by one of her pigtails and brought down to the floor with Kako. Of course Itachi stepped in and began to defuse the situation between his cousins. Of course he sighed exasperatedly. They seemed to be unable to get along in any sense of the concept. Oh man, what a drag. Why do I have to come here? He's your boyfriend, Ryuko, the ever-lazy Shikamaru grumbled as he was dragged into the celebration by his cousin. This could be what attributed to his referring to women as troublesome, also why he couldn't stand Ino as more than just a friend. It was rumored that the women of the Nara clan were troublesome and bossy. This just went on to prove it was true as Naruto looked over and saw Nara Ryuko. She was dragging the reluctant and unwilling Shikamaru inside. Naruto then let it register and he stomped over and glared at Shikamaru. Look here, buddy. I may be a lot of things, rugged, good-looking, irresistible. Naruto began with his index finger raised in the air, inflating his own ego. The point was, he wasn't Ryuko's boyfriend. Then a girl with silver hair stood behind Naruto, getting infuriated with his bragging, not to mention conceited, womanizing, perverted, arrogant. She quietly began to destroy the ego inflation with ease. That's right, and I'm also. Wait, the blonde responded before he glared angrily and turned his hands mimicking those of Guy when he was infuriated with Kakashi or Genshin. Seika. Naruto. Was all that was shouted as the two glared angrily at one another. Hatake Seika, better known as Kakashi's cousin. Saying her and Naruto didn't get along wasn't accurate. Naruto and Seika couldn't coexist as far as everyone knew. I didn't expect you here, little Miss Perfect. Naruto snapped at her, causing her to smirk and giggle at his infuriation. How predictable. Too bad he doesn't know I just do this to make him angry. She quietly thought to herself, I came with my cousin so I'm allowed to be here, Mr. Forget the rules. She retorted. Of course this made Naruto about ready to blow. Hatake Seika too was on the slender side. She dressed in a manner similar to Kakashi when he was younger, down to a mask over her face. Only difference is she wore a black denim skirt. Her hair was pulled into 3 ponytails, creating a great symmetry, 2 pigtails along the sides and 1 down the back of her head braided neatly. Yo. Sorry we're late, we had to stop and get Naruto a gift. Oh no. Kakashi was starting a truthful excuse for a change when he saw Seika and Naruto about ready to start fighting. He and Genshin quickly separated the two, pulling them away from each other, Genshin restraining Naruto's arms. Ya know Kakashi, it's kinda funny how these two can't get along. They could be good allies if they'd stop fighting. Genshin remarked as he pulled Naruto away. Kakashi smiled behind his mask as he pulled his cousin away. Agreed. Responded Kakashi as he pulled his cousin off to the side. The two Junin sighed with relief, having prevented a fight from erupting. I told Kakashi not to bring her along, because I know how the two never saw eye to eye. That's why my niece didn't come. She thinks Naruto is nothing but a showboating Genshin in training. Kurenai commented silently. This of course caused Rin to glare at her, because Kurenai made it sound like Genshin was a horrible person. Are you saying my husband is a bad influence? The brunette, who was expecting venomously, said, causing Kurenai to turn pale in fear of the pregnant Rin. No. Just I said something in anger when Genshin told me I was an ice queen. Kurenai responded as she raised her hands in defense, not wanting to make Rin angry. Genshin and Kakashi just watched from a distance with a look of shock. We better stop them, the copy ninja quietly said with a look of dread that the two would kill each other. Genshin shrugged, and since one brawl was just diffused, another one was about to start. I don't see why they're grown women. Genshin replied as he got a soda from the cooler, not wanting to get involved. Kakashi groaned and pinched the space between his eyes. Yours is going to kill mine. He responded since he was well aware that Rin was likely to kill Kurenai given how hormonal women can get while pregnant. Hours later, the party was finally winding down. Naruto was drinking some soda quietly, and without warning a piece of cake was shoved into his mouth. Stop force-feeding him, Tanbo. You're going to kill him, roared Ryu as she looked at her friend who was trying to stuff food into Naruto. Akamichi Tanbo, surprisingly enough she wasn't heavy-set like one would think. Tanbo huffed and glared at her friend. Naruto, sensing when to sneak away, did such, wanting to get the hell away from fighting between a troublesome Nara girl and an overly eager Akamichi girl. Naruto was starting to feel sorry for whoever got stuck with these two as a students, if they were on the same squad. Naruto found himself being forced to drink tea suddenly, which he wasn't ready to drink. How troublesome. Shikamaru said in an bored manner as he watched his cousin drowning Naruto in tea. Nara Ryuko, it was hard to tell she was from the Nara clan as she didn't look like she was bored beyond belief. In fact, she had bright exuberant eyes, her hair in a loose ponytail, yet her hair was pulled back tightly. She wore a light green fur-lined jacket with the clan symbol on one of the sleeves, her cargo pants a light cream color, her hite-8 tied about her left leg. Naruto gasped for air when the troublesome girl stopped drowning him in beverage, and quickly made a move to run from her and Tanbo. Look what you did. You chased him away. Tanbo roared angrily, as she pointed at Naruto who had gotten away to a plate of barbecued pork ribs. Now she was unexpectedly on the thin side, but this was because the women of the Akamichi clan were blessed with high metabolism, only the males ended up so. Large. Tanbo was almost like a nymph in the way of her figure. She was rather blessed in the area of curvaceousness, probably due to the fact fat is distributed to the hips and bust in women. She wore a reddish long jacket that came down to her knees with the kanji for food on the back, which was established as their clan symbol. She wore a form-fitting t-shirt which was a beige color. She also wore cream-colored cargo pants with a kunai holster tied about her right leg. Her hair came down to her shoulders, what could be seen of it due to her bandana-style hite-8 which covered most of her hair. Naruto was busy enjoying the ribs when suddenly he felt a love-struck gaze of a fangirl. He shifted his gaze to see Rekka staring at him. This caused a mild shudder from him. Kami, please don't put me on the same team as her. She might slow the team down if she's a fangirl. Naruto muttered a prayer to whatever powers that were, yet at the same time he felt a kindred spirits-like resonance from the girl. But he shrugged it off and resumed eating his ribs until he got a declarations for an eat-off from Choji, who was sitting on the other side of the table. The next day. Oh man, I feel like I ate a whole herd of every animal. The blonde genin groaned as he walked from his room after getting dressed. He wasn't about to eat breakfast since he felt full still. Genshin shook his head in disbelief of the boy since even he couldn't eat as much as Naruto and Choji did the night before. Well, truth was Naruto had beaten Choji and then took a challenge from Tanbo, a foolish mistake to say the least. Here, drink this, it should help you get over this indigestion of eating all that pork. Now get going, you don't wanna be late for team assignments. Rin said in a motherly tone, giving Naruto the beverage, which didn't look all that appetizing, to be honest. It looked quite nasty. But he pinched his nose and drank it down quickly, and gagged at the nastiness of the aftertaste. He set the glass down and rushed out the door. At the academy, Naruto walked in and found not many choices for where to sit. numerous girls left a seat available for Naruto to sit next to them, but he wasn't about to sit with one of them. He didn't really have much love for the loving intense sensation he felt from them at times. Sadly, he didn't have a choice but to sit between Sasuke and Rekka. The dread he was feeling was enough to bring down a bull elephant. "All right, quiet down all of you," Iruka shouted, causing the students to stop talking. He began to look over the names on the list for squad assignments. "I'll begin telling you your squad assignments now, so try to be quiet until I am done," the scarred Chunin stated as he began to prepare himself. Squad 1. Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Kako, Aburame Ari, Junin Sensei, Hyuga Kika. This decision made Kako and Sakura very displeased because they weren't in the same squad as their prospective crushes. Squad 2. Uchiha Mirai, Yamanaka Ino, Hyuga Hanabi. Junin Sensei, Huyoku Shinka. It could only be expected that these girls would benefit from the teaching of the Phoenix Child. Squad 5. Sarutobi Sayuki, Akamichi Tanbo, and Nara Rayuko. Junin Sensei, Hanzo Genshin. Naruto began to feel pity for his foster father because he would have to teach two of the most annoying girls Naruto has ever known. Squad 7. Uzumaki Naruto, Sakuretsu Rekka, Uchiha Sasuke. Junin Sensei, Hitaki Kakashi. The blonde girl was psyched when she heard she was on the same team as Naruto, but Naruto wasn't as psyched. When Sasuke was announced as the third member, Naruto groaned louder. "Why do I have to be on the same team as this whiny emo kid?" Quote. Naruto complained, earning a glare from Sasuke. "Because despite the fact you are the rookie of the year same as Sasuke, we have no scores to compare to. The teams are always built on a sound balance. Good grades, someone in the middle, and someone with low grades. That's the way it has always been," the scarred Chunin explained, much to Naruto's dismay. Squad 8. Hyuga Hinata, Inuzuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. Junin Sensei, Yuahi Kurenai. Hinata, like several of the girls in the class, was disappointed she was assigned to a different squad than Naruto, but she understood it was for the best. Squad 10. Uchiha Ima, Nara Shikamaru, and Akamichi Choji. Junin Sensei, Sarutobi Asuma. The lazy genius of the Nara clan was pleased with this. It meant a vacation away from Ino, who was far too bossy. "You will now be given details of where to meet your sensei," the Chunin with tan skin curtly stated as Mizuki handed out a card to each student with the details they needed. Naruto pocketed the information and stood up, walking for the exit. "Naruto. Where are you going? You have no idea what room our sensei is in since you obviously didn't read the details." The raven-haired boy wasted no time in busting Naruto's balls. Naruto grunted and looked at Sasuke with a rather ticked-off expression. "You don't know Kakashi-sensei very well, Amopants. He's always late," Naruto remarked and walked out the door. This caused Sasuke to grit his teeth in frustration as the fact Naruto kept calling him emo. Meanwhile, with all the Junin, "How do you plan to test your squad, Genshin? This is the first time you had a squad, if I am correct." "I'm gonna test them on survival, holding back of course," Asuma calmly said as he questioned the laid-back Genshin who was resting atop a large wolf he had summoned. I'll think of something, maybe have them try and knock my hat off. Shouldn't be too difficult." With that said, Genshin yawned loudly before being thumped by Shinka. "I intend to test them through fire. Have them work together to put a fire out," the red-haired Kaden mistress explained. She was honestly trying to help Genshin, but Sho is being a bitch about it. "I shall do the Genjutsu test, and I believe Kakashi intends to do the bell test." Kurenai responded, ever so coldly, causing the other Junin to nod. Uchiha Itachi walked towards the group silently and looked at them. "Discussing tests, I see. Genshin-san, why do you not just try something that fits the nature of a wolf master? You've been assigned a Nara, Sarutobi, and a Akamichi, surely you can find a way to test them. Itachi already had a squad of his own. He was Junin sensei to Hitaki Seika, Mitarashi Susei, and Yuahi Maika. I'll see what I feel like doing, trust me, but right now I need to get some dango and then convince Kakashi to get to testing his team before it's late. Genshin responded, hopping off his giant wolf as it disappeared, and walking off slowly. He always proved he was the rebel of the group, always a bit of an outsider. I don't get why he doesn't just eat some Pocky. It's convenient for the shinobi on the run. The weasel-faced Junin remarked with a smile that frightened the other Junins since he rarely smiled. Elsewhere. Naruto-kun, are you sure your sensei is gonna be late? The monkey princess innocently asked as she caught up to Naruto. Naruto nodded to her as he walked casually with his hands in his coat pockets. Trust me, Tsuruheim, monkey princess, if ya didn't know. Kakashi is always late. He'll say something lame like, yo. Sorry I'm late, but a black cat crossed my path and I ended up walking around the village because the village has a lot of black cats, and we'll end up calling him a liar. Naruto said sarcastically, imitating Kakashi as he quoted him. This of course made Sayuki blush at being called monkey princess, just before she giggled at Naruto's impersonation. Then out of nowhere a little boy charged at Sayuki only to trip on his own scarf, falling to the ground. You alright, Konohamaru? That looked like it hurt. She asked in worry of her little brother, who simply showed the resilience of all little boys and hopped to his feet. Of course I am. Who's this? Oh, is this the Naruto I heard you dreaming about? Oh, Naru-kun. Again. It is, isn't it? I know I'm right about this, sis. The boy made loud accusations about his elder sister. Sayuki of course blushed furiously and began hitting him over the head repeatedly as she laughed in embarrassment. Oh, shut up, Konohamaru, if you know what's good for you. The tone of her voice changed from embarrassment to furious anger quickly as she kept hitting her brother. Naruto just blinked at this, until he heard the loud clacking of wooden sandals. Naru-kun. Loudly cried a girl clad in red who flew through the air and glomped Naruto. The long-sleeved arms wrapped around his neck. The added weight caused Naruto to fall over. Rekka. Get off, Naruto-kun. You act like he's your boyfriend, which he isn't. Sayuki shouted at the fake blonde, whom found a way to irritate Sayuki. The blonde smirked and stood to her feet. Well, he might as well be. I mean, rugged and manly is a lot than effeminate and emo. Also, Shinka Kasen is Genshin-san's girlfriend. Which means I'm a prime candidate for Naru-kun. She quickly responded as he neck-whipped about preparing to fight with her rival. Sayuki's eye twitched as she smacked Rekka's hand that was pointing away. Yeah, just cause your foster mother is dating his foster father doesn't mean Jack Pyro in training. The monkey princess replied angrily. Looks like they're gonna be fighting a while, kid. How about we go get some ice cream? Naruto asked the little boy, who eagerly nodded. The two then walked off, leaving the two girls to continue their argument. Later on. Well, Konohamaru, I gotta go now. I figure that chronically late sensei of mine should be showing up soon. Have another bowl of ice cream, I'm sure Tuki won't mind getting it for you. Naruto smiled as he nodded to Tuki. Due to the success of Genshin's restaurant years ago, the Ichiraku ramen was incorporated into the family of Hanzo's steak houses. Of course, only those of the Ichiraku family working at the restaurant knew the secret recipe for ramen. This served to make the restaurant very successful, that and Genshin's quality assurance on the meat they served. At the specified classroom, have you seen Rekka, Naruto? She isn't here yet. The Uchiha quietly asked Naruto as he walked into the room. Naruto shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly and sat down at a desk, propping his feet up silently as he stared out the wind. Last I saw, she was about to have a fight with Tsuruheim, he replied before shrugging. The door slid open and in through the door walked Kakashi dragging Rekka in by the arm. He looked at the other two waiting for him and shook his head. Meet me at training field 7, in 5 minutes so we can get acquainted and conduct a test. And you, the fox in a wolf's clothing, keep your girlfriend from starting any more fights, the silver-haired Junin grumpily stated as he set Rekka at a desk before walking out. Naruto would have objected but it was too late. Geez. That monkey bitch can throw a hard punch. The Shichibi Jinchuriki began to curse the girl she had been forced to stop fighting. She probably was going to say she would have won too. Since when is she your girlfriend, Naruto? Last I checked she liked me. The raven-haired boy coldly said with just a hint of jealousy and an undertone of self-pity. Naruto smirked, picking up on the irritation that the Uchiha was feeling. Oh, what's the matter, emo pants? Jealous? The blonde boy asked, feeling quite the troublemaker at the moment. This caused Sasuke to become irate. The wild blonde then stood up and walked out the door. Rekka rushed out the door following Naruto, like the recently converted fangirl she was. Stop calling me emo, the onyx-eyed boy growled out as he gritted his teeth walking out the door silently. It was clear Naruto constantly referring to Sasuke as being emo was working the raven-haired genins that last nerve. Training field number 7. The three rookie ninja found themselves at the designated training field where for a rare moment Kakashi was on time. Kakashi just stared at each of them with his exposed eye. My first opinion of you as you all is, he began as he trailed off to build up the tension. He saw that Naruto could care less about what people think of him, the hopefulness in the eyes of Rekka, and the conceit of Sasuke thinking that he could be thought highly of. You all shouldn't be here. From the looks of it, one of you can't take orders, another is trying to get approval, and the last is so full of himself he doesn't think he should work with others. His words were accurate and cut through each of their psyches, except Naruto, who shrugged it off. Kakashi gritted his teeth since it was hard to break him of his ego. Genshin, I see you gave Naruto pointers on not listening to others. Let's see if he listens to lessons, the copy ninja thought silently as he continued to size each of his students up. Alright, the chances of you three passing my test is 0.10%, so I don't plan to get to know your names yet. So what I want is to know is your what you like, dislike, and your dreams. Let me start you off, you long sleeves. The silver-haired Junin pointed to Rekka, who appeared to be daydreaming or something of the like at the moment. She snapped to attention and blinked for a moment. I like studying in my spare time. I don't care if it's ninjutsu or something of a hobby as long as it's fun. My dislikes are having nothing to do, and my goal is learn about who I really am. The girl quietly said, showing that she had more depth than what she had showed. I was expecting her to be an airhead. Seems she has some depth to her, the copy ninja said under his breath as he could see the girl was actually not some shallow fangirl, which gave Kakashi some hope. He then turned his attention to the wild-looking ninja who looked like he was raised by wolves, which wasn't a far cry from the truth. Okay, you. No sleeves, the cycloptic Junin said as he pointed at Naruto. He was in dread of what kind of pearls of wisdom the kid might come up with. Me. I like the unusual family I have, practicing ninjutsu, and learning to cook when I have the time. My dislikes are arrogance, having fangirls set upon me, and being encouraged to hit on everything with ovaries. My goal, TCH, like that takes a brain surgeon. I want to be Hokage someday so I can protect all of those I care about and consider part of my pack. By which I mean the whole village. The sleeveless genin explained with eloquence which surprised the copy ninja. But the mentioning of a pack made the copy ninja realize that Genshin wasn't as baseless as he once thought him to be. Alright, you, hair. The chronically late Junin pointed at Sasuke, at last causing Sasuke to glare, and the other two to bite back a snicker. With his fingers laced in front of him, the raven-haired genius collected himself. I like to study when I can. I dislike annoyances and how girls seem to be crazy about someone they haven't seen in a long time, and my goal is to help restore my clan, and to avenge the disgrace brought upon it by a certain person, the raven-haired Avenger coldly stated as he continued to look at Kakashi and his team with dislike. Alright. We'll begin the test. Kakashi coldly stated as he pulled out 2 bells, which he dangled in front of the 3. You have until dusk to acquire these from me, but you better come at me with the intent to kill, or you will fail. The one of you who doesn't get one will. The silver-haired Junin was then cut off, be tied to the stump right. The somewhat arrogant Sasuke stated coldly with half interest in the test. Exactly. So try to work together, the cycloptic Junin said with mild irritation at Sasuke's know-it-all behavior. The 3 genin nodded their heads and disappeared into the surroundings. Hours would pass and Kakashi was still on guard, of course. That's when Sasuke rushed Kakashi from behind, causing the Junin to cunningly block the Uchiha's attacks with great ease. First the punch was caught, then the kick was blocked, then Sasuke was sent airborne. Senin Garashi. Kakashi called out as he put his hands together and thrust them forward, hitting Sasuke in a very uncomfortable place which sent him flying off in pain. That's when from 2 directions Naruto and Rekka came rushing from both sides, Naruto with his 7-bladed sword drawn. Kakashi smirked behind his mask, seeing that the 2 had already gotten good teamwork skills which he was trying to teach. Naruto swung the long sword swiftly, which Kakashi dodged swiftly and gracefully at that. That's when Rekka produced her steel fans and the long sleeves flew back, allowing her better momentum. Her fans lashed out swiftly and cut through the air with great savagery as her eyes flared angrily as she came with the intent to kill. While Kakashi was keeping up with the pace of the attacks quite well, yet he was at his limit, well for the level of holding back. That's when he saw Naruto tug the silk sash that was tied around the metal loop of an ornate Tai Chi sword, causing it to be removed from its scabbard. Naruto grabbed hold of it once it was out of the sheath and swung it forward, cutting the 2 bells loose. That's when Rekka tossed 1 fan into the air and grabbed hold of the bells, gracefully spinning away. Naruto smirked and swung both swords and stopped them right at Kakashi's neck. Kakashi-sensei, next time don't hold back. K. Naruto said with a wild smirk just before pulling his swords away, and sheathing them. Naru-kun. Here's your bell. The chipper blonde chimed as she walked over to Naruto. He just raised a hand to her with a kind smile. Give it to Mr. I can do it on my own. I'll be tied to the stump. Naruto was showing a kind gesture which caught the prideful Uchiha off guard. It was great trauma to him finding that his rival was showing a kind gesture, or what he thought was pity. Needless to say, you all pass. What Naruto did proves the basis for teamwork, putting the whole of the team first. Kakashi calmly said as he looked at the 3 students in front of him. He looked at Sasuke and shook his head. Long ago I learned the hard way, a shinobi who doesn't follow orders is scum, but a shinobi that abandons his comrades for the sake of the mission is worse than scum. The experienced shinobi explained coldly, remembering the lesson his best friend had taught him. He looked at Naruto, who impressed him the most at the moment. But you have all earned the right to be shinobi. We will start going on missions as of tomorrow. Kakashi then gave them all an overly enthusiastic thumbs up, after which Naruto and Rekka linked arms and danced like ninnies in celebration, chanting shinobi repeatedly. A few days later, Team 7 was getting another mission assignment. They were about to be given another D-ranked mission. That's when Naruto snapped, "No more finding that damn cat. I'm going insane. The cat will return by itself. Give us a real mission. If you have a sense sympathy, give us something worthy of a ninja." Naruto roared out angrily, causing Rekka to nod her head in agreement. Naruto. All genin are required to go on a set amount of D-ranked missions. So no complaining. Iruka responded angrily at the complaints of the genin. Iruka, I think they're more than ready for a C-rank mission, and I have just the mission in mind. Send him in. The elderly Sarutobi stated as he diffused the situation. He also figured it was necessary for a shinobi to have at least one higher-ranked mission. One of the shinobi at the door nodded and opened the door, letting a sacket-wearing old man walk in. Tazuna-san, this is the team that will be escorting you back to Wave Country, the pipe-smoking Cage calmly explained. Of course Tazuna didn't seem too impressed. HMPH. The squad leader is half-blind, the rest are just kids, but beggars can't be choosers. The hard-to-please man coldly stated. This caused Kakashi to raise his eyebrow. Of course Naruto and Rekka on the other hand were furious. They were not just kids. They were almost teenagers, which in truth made them not children, it made them preteens. We'll need to get things for the trip. We'll meet you by the front gates when we are prepared. We'll meet you at the gate when we are ready, the Cycloptic Junin explained subtly, glad that Naruto didn't try to attack the client. That's fine. Just don't take long, I need to get back so I can finish building the great bridge. I am a great bridge builder, you know. With that the man took a swig from his bottle of sake. This resulted in Naruto resisting the urge to call the man a drunk as well. With that the shinobi team stepped out of the office and proceeded to head home to prepare for the mission. 1 hour later, Kakashi and the 3 genin stood at the gate ready to go. They weren't on the road for less than 2 minutes when Rekka began to ask questions. Sensei, don't they have a shinobi village in the land of waves? She, the girl with a long braid, asked quietly, since she was under the impression all countries had shinobi. No. The land of waves is cut off from the mainland and it is such a small island a shinobi village couldn't be settled there. So if the people there need the assistance of a shinobi they have to travel to one of the shinobi villages to get the assistance they need. The Cycloptic Junin explained kindly, as they walked. Of course as they walked he took note of the puddles alongside the road. Since it hadn't rained recently it was out of place, it got his suspicions going. Then from out of nowhere 2 ninja wearing respirators rushed forward and coiled bladed chains around Kakashi and shredded him to pieces. 1 down, 2 down, one of them stated as they rushed towards Naruto, who froze in a panic since he had no real life or death situations ever. One of the 2 shinobi managed to scratch Naruto's arm with their clawed gauntlets, as they continued towards Rekka. That's when with quick thinking a combination of shuriken and kunai bound the chain that connected the duo's gauntlets to a tree. This of course didn't stop them as they dislodged the chain from their gauntlets and continued to bolt for it. As if by a divine miracle Kakashi returned from the grove and took both down with a clothesline maneuver. Kurigakure shinobi, who sent you? Kakashi attempted to get some answers but the 2 shinobi then kicked Kakashi in the stomach and bolted for it in 2 separate directions, making them impossible to catch at this juncture. Sasuke smirked, feeling a sense of superiority to Naruto, and said, "Are you okay? Crybaby." This of course irritated Naruto since he spent years trying to make himself better than Sasuke without beating the tar out of him. Naruto, you may want to tend to your wounds. Their claws were laced with poison, possibly through bloodletting. The bearer of white chakra said. Hearing this Naruto unsheathed his long sword and punctured the palm of his hand to release some blood. What are you crazy, Naruto? The blonde girl shouted, thinking a kunai would have sufficed. No. I'm making a blood oath, to never be afraid like that again. I'm always talking a tough game but I need to actually not be afraid in real combat. I'm a shinobi now. The whisker-marked boy roared. He let his blood pour down the blade of his oddly shaped sword, not noticing that when his blood touched the first kanji, the kanji for courage. When this occurred the kanji then glowed for a moment, then with a flick of his wrist Naruto flicked the blood from the sword and sheathed it. Then he took some bandages from his pack and bandaged up his wounds quickly. Tazuna, We were under the impression the people after you were bandits when the mission was requested, but the fact shinobi are after you changes the nature of the mission altogether. It was a C-ranked mission. But now it's likely an A-ranked mission due to other shinobi being involved, so come clean, the silver-haired shinobi gruffly said with the concern of his team coming first. Fine, ya got me. The truth is we couldn't afford to put in the request for the A-ranked mission, so I lied. A few years back, a man named Gaidu took over our little island, making our island impoverished and overall a hellhole. So to help bring in goods cheaper, I opted to build a bridge to connect the island to the mainland. That's when the attacks began. It was clear the Gaidu didn't want to lose the stranglehold he had on us. So we scrapped what money we could and I went to get the help of some shinobi. So please help us out. The bridge builder said with a pleading voice. This of course was a good change of pace since he had been verbally abusive since he had met the shinobi team. I guess we have no choice. If things are that desperate, we'll help, but as of now this will be classified as an A-ranked mission. The Junin with silver hair responded since he wanted to avoid any possible guilt trips. Of course the whole dynamics of the situation was changed dramatically. This means we will have to be on guard even more, since shinobi will be after Tazuna, which means Sasuke, you shall have to work with the rest of like a team. There is no I in team. The Junin was now speaking with a more authoritative voice. The Genin team nodded their heads in understanding. Of course Sasuke was still not too thrilled about having to work well with others. Especially the one who had done everything he could to embarrass him at every chance. The Sharingan was the equalizer in the all of this because he considered the Sharingan to greatest power. If I use my Sharingan I am stronger than you Naruto, but you keep proving to be better than I am, and I am an Uchiha, we're supposed to be superior. Yet you freezing means nothing. I have to be stronger. The raven-haired Avenger thought to himself. It was as if he were unsatisfied with the strength he had. A few days later. Get down. Kakashi shouted as the group all dropped to the ground swiftly. A large sword flew through the air before embedding itself deep in a tree. You've been lucky up to this point Tazuna, but you won't be returning home. Shouted a giant of a man who was perched on the branch of a nearby tree. The man then widened his gaze when he saw the swords that the blonde genin carried on his person. Those swords, where did a brat like that acquire them? The large ninja thought to himself. Mamochi Zabuza, the demon of the mist, that explains why you are here, because the way I heard it the 7 shinobi swordsmen of Kurigakure were on the lam for the uprising that started. The cycloptic Junin coldly said, his visible eyes showing a more serious expression for a change. This is when the monolithic shinobi turned his attention to Kakashi, a demonic look in his eyes as he rushed through the trees making a straight line towards his sword. Ripping the sword from the tree he dropped to the ground and headed straight for Kakashi and the two began to engage in combat. That's when Kakashi ran across the water heading right for a trap. Zabuza put his large sword in the holster on his back and produced hand seals quickly, Suiro no Jutsu. The water then rose and surrounded Kakashi as the demon of the mist put his hand forward to maintain hold on the prison by pouring his chakra into the water. I see, so that must mean you're Sharingan no Kakashi. An S-ranked enemy ninja listed in the bingo book of Kurigakure, the demonic man stated with malice to his voice. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto roared as he unsheathed the long sword from the scabbard across his back, his left hand unsheathing the katana that rested at his right side. No, Naruto, you guys leave, he is a stronger shinobi than you think. When he failed to pass the entrance exam he went on to kill every student that did, the bearer of the white chakra coldly explained. This caused a sick smile to form under the mask of the Kurigakure Nukenin. Like that'll do any good, he'll still find us, and like Genshin always told me. Wolves always look after their own. You're like family Kakashi-sensei. I'm not running. The blonde with a flowing mane flowing behind him, almost in a heroic manner. The Kurigakure shinobi without eyebrows glared angrily and formed a water clone. It's that kind of talk that proves you are just a kid. In Kurigakure, to become a genin we are forced to kill someone to pass. You just have a little test to make a little bunshin. Imagine having to kill someone you ate meals with and studied with. That's what makes a true shinobi. The mist ninja roared angrily. The Mizu bunshin charged across the water, then knocked the wild-looking genin down to the ground. It pulled the Hite 8 from Naruto's head before kicking Naruto across the ground. You aren't fit to wear the Hite 8. The towering swordsman cruelly said, which caused Naruto to growl angrily. Kuchiyos. Flashback no jutsu. Naruto. That headband is very important. It belonged to your father. And to the Shadaime himself, it's a family heirloom. So take good care of it. Because it'll be like those who wore this headband in the past are there guiding you. Their spirits live on through the next generation, the sacket-wearing Junin explained in a fatherly tone. The blonde nodded his head in understanding. Back in the present. Hey, you, the freak with no eyebrows. The blonde shouted as he stood to his feet, sheathing the two swords quickly. You insulted the wrong genin. Kaden. Suin Kanairo Tentusama, fire release. Twin gold sun. The wild genin roared as he formed the two golden orbs of fire in his hands. Lowering his arms, Naruto rushed swiftly across the ground, leaving twin blackened trails as the spheres scorched the ground. This sight left the demon of the mist in shock as the spheres lunged forward straight into the Mizu bunshin, completely destroying it. The intense heat striking the water caused great amounts of steam to rise. The wild ninja then caught hold of his Hite 8 and tied it back around his head and held his fist out with his thumb pointing downward. And you can bank on this, demon, you're going down. The young shinobi declared with great confidence in his voice. Where did he get this strength? A few days ago he froze up. Naruto, you keep surpassing me. It shouldn't be like this. I should be the better one. You are just a fool from a fallen clan. I'm an Uchiha, we're supposed to be superior. The Uchiha muttered at a low level. He was sick of feeling inferior to Naruto, who was somewhat stronger, more confident, and lastly didn't think twice about anything. Hey Sasuke, we gotta get Kakashi-sensei out of that prison, so we need to work together. Rekka, you too, the blonde with a wolf's mentality explained as he walked towards his teammates. With his back to Zabuza, Naruto began to use hand seals, making use of Kurigakure no Jutsu, causing a thick fog to fill the area. Okay. Here's the plan. Sasuke, you throw this. As Naruto said this, he produced a Fuma shuriken from his pack and handed it to Sasuke. The boy with onyx eyes nodded and prepared it. And then, he'll just catch it. So what's this great plan of yours? The Uchiha didn't seem that impressed since the plan seemed pretty much flawed. Rekka then smacked Sasuke across the back of the head. Sasuke-kun, let Naru-kun finish. The blonde girl rasped with anger. This of course caused the raven-haired boy to blanch in fear. Arigato Rekka. Now here is where the plan begins to unfold further. I will then use Henge to turn into a second one when Emo Pants uses Cage Shuriken no Jutsu to hide me in the shadow of the first. The freak will jump above it, that's when the attack comes from behind. Naruto smirked proudly as he explained his strategy. It was pretty much flawless. And what about me, Naru-kun? The girl seemed interested in the role she would play, hoping for a big part in Naruto's plan. You protect Tazuna. The spiky-haired shinobi quickly shot down Rekka's hopes without much effort. Let's just get this done with. The Uchiha muttered, and Naruto created a cage bunshin to hold his place, and used Henge to turn himself into the second shuriken. The cage bunshin dissipated the thick fog, giving Sasuke the chance he needed, a clear line of sight. The genius of the team then threw the shuriken swiftly, letting it cut through the air, as if it were true to its namesake. You can't hit me with a shuriken. Not even if you threw it hard enough. The swordsman exclaimed as he caught the shuriken, but traveling in the shadow of the first flew straight forward. Like I said, you can't hit me with a shuriken. As he said this, he jumped in the air, avoiding the second shuriken with ease. As the shuriken flew under Zabuza, Naruto dispelled his transformation. The blonde pulled a Kusari Fundo out of a holster on his left leg and swung it. The chain coiled around Zabuza's torso, teething the wild genin to his target. Pulling the chain, Naruto swung himself around, causing him to fly straight for the demon of the mist. Releasing the chain and letting physics take its course, Naruto unsheathed the sword on his back, and prepared to swing. The dark-haired Nuke Nin, seeing no choice, released the prison of water from Kakashi and turned, throwing the Fuma Shuriken at Naruto, whom deflected it with his sword. Your luck has run out, Zabuza. The copy ninja darkly said. He was freed from the prison of water. Raising his Hite 8, Kakashi revealed his Sharingan eye. Naruto continued his flight towards Zabuza. The demon of the mist prepared his sword, swinging it towards the genin. Naruto brought forward his sword while unsheathing the ornate Tai Chi sword for added assistance against Zabuza's sword, but due to the shinobi swordsman's greater strength, the blonde was sent flying across the water. I'm not interested in fighting you, brat. With that said, the swordsman holstered his sword and threw Kakashi across the water and proceeded to do hand seals. Kakashi, regaining his balance in mid-flight, landed on top of the water and began to copy Zabuza's hand seals in turn, and at once both roared out, Sweden, Sweryuden, water release, water dragon blast. As they both shouted this simultaneously, two large serpentine dragons made of water arose from the water, roaring out just before crashing right into one another. This caused a large wall of water to crash throughout the area, but the two Junin were continuing on. Zabuza began to form the hand seals. That's when Kakashi finished the set of hand seals first. Sweden. Daibakufu, water release. Great waterfall technique. The copy ninja shouted, and a great blast of water spiraled straight for Zabuza and sent him flying. Just as his large frame hit a tree, two kunai struck his body, keeping him in place. Like I said, Zabuza, your luck has run out. Today you die. The silver-haired ninja spoke coldly as he prepared a kunai to deal the final blow. As he prepared to do such, Senbon struck the large Nukenin in the neck, killing him. That's when an Oinin descended from the trees above and stood ready to fight. I thank you. I was tracking him for some time, but you seem to have done me a favor by wearing him out. I shall now take his body to be disposed of. The Oinin, with a spiral-designed mask, said as they hefted the large man over their shoulder and prepared to leave. Not so fast. If you're an Oinin, shouldn't you dispose of the body right here? Whisker-marked boy shouted as he dragged himself out of the water. Once he was on the land, he sheathed his blades and walked forward. The Oinin frowned from behind her mask and jumped into the trees quickly. Not good. That boy is observant and well-informed, the girl thought to herself as she carried her master away. Pretty observant, Naruto, the copy ninja calmly said as he pulled his Hite 8 down to cover the Sharingan before he used too much chakra. Naruto yelled angrily and unsheathed the katana at his right. What the hell's going on? Quote. He roared and swung the blade horizontally. This action didn't seem to do anything, but after he sheathed the blade, the tree slid down due being cut through and crashed to the ground. The reports say Zabuza had followers with him, his adoptive daughter, his biological daughter, the demon brothers whom we encountered already, and whoever that so-called Oinin was. This is deeper than we expected. We'll continue on from here to make sure we reach our destination. Despite Zabuza escaping, we have time to prepare. He received enough injuries to buy us time to do such. The Cycloptic Junin explained to the group, whom all nodded. Naruto was still furious that he didn't do enough to stop the large ninja from getting away. For now things were at a stalemate. It was clear the three genin would need more training, if they wished to protect the client. Rekka would require a chance to prove herself. Sasuke how to work with others to bring out his full potential, and Naruto a way to focus his existent talents for ninjutsu. The fact the group they were facing were likely all S-rank Nukenin, and then there was Gado's thugs even as strong as Naruto was, he couldn't take down the whole of them. If what they heard was right, Gado had his own private army of mercenaries. Tucson, I was worried you wouldn't get here in one piece. Are these the shinobi? A dark-haired woman asked as the group entered Tazuna's house. She was apparently the bridge builder's daughter. The bridge builder nodded his head as the door closed behind them. We'll guard in shifts. I and Sasuke will take one shift and Naruto and Rekka shall take the other shift. Between guard duty rounds, you shall all begin training based on where they are with their skill. Zabuza will be back, the copy ninja explained silently. This caused a look of worry to come over the daughter of the bridge builder. Don't worry, Tsunami. They may not look like it, but they're strong. Especially the brat who needs a haircut. The old man said in a reassuring tone. Of course, the young boy with a hat on his head didn't seem impressed and stormed into another room, closing the door behind himself. Well, that certainly was rude. Rekka exclaimed with anger, crossing her arms over her chest, blowing at her blonde bangs with some irritation. Don't mind him. My son doesn't man to be so rude. Tsunami calmly responded in an apologetic tone, feeling a tad ashamed of her son's behavior. Meanwhile, in the forest, two shinobi descended from the trees. One was an aged man, probably of comparable age to the Sannin, a giant sword sheathed across his back. He wore a blue and silver-colored Hanfu-style ensemble, his spiky gray hair whipped about as a breeze came through the clearing. His grayish eyes shifted to the Oinin. A Meko? That genin? He has great skill that is unfocused. Is he the one you spoke of? The foster son of the Ginukami? The elder ninja queried as he looked at the Oinin who hid behind the blank mask. The woman nodded her head before returning to the examination of the scorch marks on the ground. Mizukage-sama, you do realize he is your... The woman began, but the man raised a hand to silence her, a stern look washing over his face. I am not the Mizukage anymore, just an exile like you trying to earn the redemption of our village. I am not certain of the relation you keep suggesting, Ameko. The man gruffly said as he examined the severed tree, finding it was cleanly cut through by the sword. Could this have been Heen? No, it couldn't be. The legendary 9 swords were scattered to the ends of the land. There is no way a brat like that would obtain that blade. He quietly said as he examined the deep cutting in the tree. It didn't just cut the tree, it tore through the tree almost like a chainsaw. We're losing Zabuza's trail, Hayate-san. We won't be able to find him if it gets too cold. The woman calmly said to her superior, whom nodded his head, and the two jumped into the trees above. Now with Team 7. Okay, to begin the training we will begin with tree climbing exercises. But, you will be climbing without your hands. The silver-haired Junin explained silently. The 3 genin stood in front of him ready to learn. Without our hands? Impossible. The blonde girl roared in disbelief, crossing her arms over her chest. That's when Kakashi gave an example as he effortlessly walked up the side of the tree and held himself upside down on a strong branch. I hope that answers your question, Rekka. Now all 3 of you begin climbing. Get as high up as you can and mark it with a kunai. Every time you pass that limit, mark it. The idea is to use your chakra to hold yourself to the tree. Now go. The copy ninja proved that he was as helpful as a teacher as he was at showing up on time. The 3 each ran up the tree, Rekka making it about to the first branch before her chakra caused destruction to the body of the tree. Sasuke would reach halfway before the damage from using too much chakra began. Naruto rushed up the tree, proving he had gone through this training previously, reaching the top of the tree, quickly perching on the top. Kakashi-sensei, you're gonna have to teach me something else. Don't even think water walking. Genshin taught me that one too. the long-haired blonde cheekily said, a smug smirk on his face. Right. Rekka, you might have an easier time with this exercise if you stopped using henge to hide your hair color. You two continue the tree climbing. It will teach you chakra control, the bearer of the white chakra explained silently as he looked to the other students. Rekka sighed and used the hand seals to release the illusion she cast to make her hair look normal. This of course was enough to catch Naruto's attention, causing him to lose momentary focus on his chakra control, and fell from his perch grabbing a branch that could support his weight immediately. Hehehehehe. I meant to do that. Yeah, the ever-cheerful blonde shinobi responded just before he descended safely down the tree. The Junin only could pinch between his eyes, of all the students. I had to get the Genshin in training, was the one thought the copy ninja had about Naruto, who was somehow the best student. Alright Naruto, if you studied with Genshin for 7 years you possibly encountered some of his, mates. Which means you know form manipulation and how to use elemental techniques. Kakashi said with a cringe since he couldn't quite comprehend how the Kinzokuden user could do such a thing. At hearing this Naruto smirked in a wild manner, forming the Rasengan in the palm of his left hand. The spiraling force of chakra pulled into the center, forming a constantly spiraling sphere. Utsi Kakashi sensei, I had to learn tree walking and water walking so Genshin Tusen could teach me this. The boy cheekily said before letting the sphere dissipate. The copy ninja became more serious as he stepped forward quietly. I'm not as nice as Genshin. I will be pushing to your very limits. Same goes for Sasuke and Rekka. The Junin coldly said as he looked to the 3 students seriously. Naruto just smirked with a fox-like grin on his face. Sasuke, Rekka, you two keep up the tree climbing exercises. I'm going to show Naruto a technique. Come with me Naruto, Cycloptic Junin quietly said as he turned and walked off towards another part of the forest. Naruto shrugged and followed without hesitation. This dealt another blow to Sasuke's frail ego. I'm from the Uchiha clan, I should be the one proving to be the best, not that idiot, that smiling fool. He muttered under his breath as he ran up the side of the tree once again, his competitive nature driving him to try to prove that he was better than Naruto. The girl with fiery hair blinked at this and returned to her attempt to scale the tree using only her feet. She began to use just the minimum amounts of chakra to achieve it. She found her ascent increasing little by little. Yet with Kakashi and Naruto, I am about to teach you my only original technique, the Chidori, or as it has become known, Reikiri. I teach this to you because as I have seen you know the fire-based technique that Genshin made with assistance from Shinka. You will need to have great speed to utilize the Chidori as it will die down if you take too long to reach your target. I shall now show you the hand seals required, the one-eyed shinobi explained with a serious tone. He then formed the hand seals for the jutsu slowly so Naruto could see, then he grasped hold of his own arm to steady the Reikiri in his hand before rushing swiftly towards a large stone that was in the forest. The large sphere of lightning struck and shattered the stone to pieces, displaying the might of the element. Naruto, the normally quick to speak genin, had nothing to say. He was in awe of the beauty and the power of the attack he had witnessed. Now let's see what you can achieve with your attempt with Chidori. Try that stone over there. The silver-haired Junin calmly said as he pointed toward a stone that was big enough for a first attempt. Naruto nodded eagerly and formed the hand seals and rushed forward as the sphere of cracking thunder began to form as he neared the halfway point. He finally reached the stone and struck it. The sphere of crackling electricity put a small crater in the rock, but not something to be impressed about. Not bad for a first try Naruto, but you need to work on your speed. Keep going until you can completely shatter a stone on the first run. This attack was designed for assassinations. Now try again, the Junin coldly said as he stood off to the side. His methods of training were in fact less laid back compared to Genshin's methods. Naruto nodded, his head moving through the hand seals, running faster as he formed the orb of crackling thunder. He slammed the sphere into the same stone again, dealing a deeper blow to the stone. You are making progress, Naruto, but keep going. As you have learned its other elemental siblings, the Chidori will be a fine tool for your arsenal. Keep trying. I need to check on Sasuke and Rekka. The silver-haired Junin calmly said as he turned and walked to where his other two students were training. The blonde shinobi pulled the mask connected to his shirt up over his face before removing his long coat and throwing it to the side, letting it hit the ground, showing the fact it was weighted and somewhat heavy. Okay, time to begin training the way I do best, the boy said as he smirked behind the mask. He extended his arms and proceeded to form the hand seals for a jutsu. Meanwhile, in the hideout Zabuza and his group were using, Zabuza was being tended to by the previously masked Haku. You could have killed me, Haku, the Nukenin complained as he rubbed his neck where the Senbon had been. The girl didn't show any expression. She just tended to bandaging her master's wounds. Off to the side in the room were two other girls, the demon of the mist's daughters. The raven-haired girl finished her bandaging of Zabuza and put her medical supplies away. Hardly. I could have targeted your body and gotten the same effect, but the line of sight was blocked, she dryly said. She spoke as if she were emotionally dead on the inside. Zabuza's biological daughter, Nami, was examining the chains that were bound around her father's torso intently. She was finding the design functional and the detail flawless. Tusin, this is no ordinary Kusari Fundo. There is an intricate series of seals engraved into the weights. I don't quite comprehend the meaning, let alone the use, the girl said as her grayish-blue eyes shifted over the weights on the chains. She set the chains down, she then slipped her hands into a set of black gauntlets which went clear to her shoulders. She flexed her fingers slowly and clenched her fists. Her hair was tied into two braids. She wore a black leather top that seemed like it took a long time to put on due to the leather straps. Her pants were a monochromatic scheme of camouflage, and as for her footwear, she wore traditional ninja sandal. The other, the adopted daughter who was named Kaisui, was lurking in a corner, remaining silent as she sharpened kunai. Her yellow eyes shifted across the room silently as her shoulder-length hair shook lightly. It was the very color of oceanic water itself. She wore a sleeveless wetsuit for a top, blue denim jeans, black ninja sandals, and had her black jacket tied about her waist. Her slender figure was very deceiving, in all honesty. On the contrary, she was stronger than she appeared. She had an air of deception about her. Tusin, you should really be more careful in the future. If that was the copy ninja Hitaki, you could have been killed, the girl calmly said. As she turned her head, one could clearly see the gill-like marks on her neck. As she finished this sentence, their employer barged in through the door. But he wasn't alone. A man with a black robe was accompanying Gato. The man in the black robe had 3 high ponytails, each with a set of strings connecting the ties in his hair in a style of a spider web. I've been meaning to speak with you, Zabuza. I paid you to kill the bridge builder. But maybe you can explain this to me. Why is he still alive? The crime boss began angrily. The 3 girls all glared at the crime boss as if they were ready to take him down if he posed a threat to Zabuza. Gato, I would advise you against starting too much trouble, the dark-haired man warned the crime boss, his voice cold and emotionless as he spoke. The crime boss didn't heed this warning as he unsheathed a sword that was contained in his cane. Zabuza didn't show any signs of fear. The 3 girls rushed in quickly. Haku grabbed the man by the arm, applying pressure causing the man's arm to snap. Nami rushed in, clenched her fist, extending claws from her gauntlets which she held to the businessman's neck. Kaisui was the last to walk over, grabbed hold of her trident which was propped against the wall. She held it in her right hand, the 3 prings pointed towards the man's groin. Threaten our Tusin again and you will suffer 3 kinds of pain. We are not amused by threats, the green-haired girl coldly said with a sadistic grin on her face. The man in black made no moves to help Getu in any way. This is why I told you not to start trouble. Now let Zabuza explain why he failed. The dark-haired man coldly said. He showed he had no loyalties to Getu whatsoever, and the armed escorts for Getu seemed to be afraid of him. Fine Kurokan, the man replied as he gritted his teeth trying to ignore the pain in his broken arm. The three girls backed away from Getu quietly. The masked man kept his gaze fixated on Getu to make sure he didn't try anything. What happened was the bridge builder has bodyguards, nothing to joke about seeing as one of the brats he was with outsmarted me. Also the squad leader was Hitaki Kakashi, the demon of the mist calmly said. At hearing this Kurokan showed mild shock on his face. He is lucky to have survived. Hitaki is no pushover like Genshin is. I cannot afford to be discovered by him. I will have to see how things turn out if I plan to get my hands on these samples, the dark-haired man thought to himself in silence. Getu, the excuse fits, it would take someone like Kakashi to defeat someone of Zabuza's power, give him another chance. I have to leave now. Oh, and don't get yourself killed. I require you to be alive for the time being. That said, Kurokan turned on his heels and walked out quickly. The businessman watched silently and felt a chill run down his spine. You have one last chance, don't mess it up, one chance. Getu stated wrathfully as he stepped out of the room with his armed entourage in tow. Zabuza smirked darkly beneath his mask of bandages. He wasn't bound to lose a second time. Once the wounds are healed we will make our strike, got it? He coldly said as he rested in the chair. Elsewhere. It was dusk and nearing dinner time at Tazuna's house. Finally in through the door came Kakashi's three students. He had left them to train on their own. Sadly for Rekka, the two male team members, she had overdid it and she had to carry them both back. Kakashi-sensei. The redhead began a deadly look in her eyes. Kakashi recognized this look, the very look that could make Genshin cower in fear. If you're training too overly competitive, Genin, don't leave. Naruto taught Sasuke some technique he picked up and the two got into a competition. I had to carry them both back and they argued the whole time back. Rekka roared out angrily as she dropped the two boys she for the moment considered to be idiots. She then stormed off to the room that she was being lent for the time being. So tell me, did you both achieve what you were supposed to? The Junin queried, having been unfazed by the complaining girl. Didn't quite get the hang of the attack, but created my own variant until I get it down. Trust me, Kakashi-sensei, it's kick. Is dinner ready? The wild boy asked quietly after talking about his training. This made Kakashi pinch the bridge of his nose yet again. Sasuke sat up feeling a sense of superiority suddenly at the revelation that Naruto was somewhat of a flake. I managed to reach the top of the tree, Kakashi, although Rekka seemed to reach the top before me. And like that the Uchiha genius lost his sense of superiority. Of course this would mean Kakashi would have to take the time to train each of them more. Well, I will give you and Rekka your own training regiments tomorrow to continue your training, and you both should get a shower in, especially you, Naruto. You smell like a wet dog, the copy ninja commented, which struck Naruto brutally since he didn't think he smelled that bad. But like that a new competition was on and the two began to make a rush for the bathroom to clean up. And just as the two reached the bathroom, Rekka rushed into the bathroom to clean up, and the two rivals fell over in defeat. Women, they both muttered in unison. This was the rare occurrence of Naruto and Sasuke agreeing about something. Hours later during dinner, Inari kept glaring at the four shinobi. He didn't seem to think much of them. Then the silence finally broke. You got a problem with me, cub? Naruto snapped angrily. His patience was a thin thing to begin with. Constantly being glared at made Naruto very unhappy and very volatile. The boy kept glaring and then slammed his hands down. Yeah. You're not even from here. You have no right to be interfering in stuff. There is no such thing as hope, you'll just end up dead like everyone else. He snapped angrily at Naruto. This was the final point of irritation for the blonde shinobi. You talk like you have it so bad, you aren't the only one who is mistreated, punk. Just because others have died trying to help this village doesn't mean we will too. Now shut up, you're irritating me. You need to get a glimpse of reality, not everything is set in stone. Kakashi-sensei, I'm going out for a while. Naruto said as he stood up and walked to the door. He stopped for a moment and looked back at the boy and frowned some. Cry me a river, we all lose something in life. Try to realize it's not all about you. I couldn't really give two shits about how you feel. Think about others before you talk next time. The Jinchuriki finished his speech and walked out swiftly. Rekka stood up and rushed after Naruto, feeling like she should follow him. Inari didn't take to the verbal lashing too well and ran towards his room sobbing some. I'm sorry for Naruto yelling. He doesn't exactly have the most tact when it comes to people thinking they're the only ones worse off. He spent 7 years traveling abroad with his foster parents. I can only guess what he had seen. The copy ninja explained silently. He could only guess that this was the reason Naruto reacted so harshly. Outside, Naruto had climbed his way to the top of a tree in the forest. He had gotten this habit whenever he was upset or frustrated to climb up a tree so he could be alone. This time he wouldn't be left alone. Rekka had followed him since he left and was now climbing up the tree using the training she had acquired that day. Go away, Rekka. I want to be left alone, he growled out as he leaned against the tree silently. Tough luck. I'm not letting you be alone right now, she defiantly responded as she sat down on the branch right beside him. You aren't the only one who feels alone, Naruto. Shinka-Kasen told me about you, and how despite you had a family of sorts you would still act up, she quietly continued. She looked at him with the sincerest expression as she talked to him. I'm no different. Shinka-Kasen found me out in the wilderness near Kusagaker. That's where I was from. The villagers hated me, they wanted me dead for something. I don't know what it was, but they wanted me gone. So one night I ran away. The clutched her arms tightly, as she remembered the pain of her past, the bad memories. You were just like me, huh? Can you tell me why you constantly chase me? Even though we met just a few days ago. When I met you, you were obsessed with emo pants, now you're obsessed with me. Naruto responded dryly as he looked at her from the corner of his eye. He couldn't quite get why she became so obsessed with him so suddenly. It was a tiresome thing for Naruto. Most of the girls seemed to be interested in his image instead of who he was. I don't really know. Something about you, you're just very warm. I dunno. Compared to Sasuke you just seem very kind, Naru-kun. Rekka explained as she began to fidget silently. She was trying to be as honest with her feelings as she could. Her eyes shifted out across the horizon as she swung her legs about silently. Are your feelings genuine? I won't be just some fleeting crush, you know. The blonde with really unruly hair replied as he looked over at her silently. He wasn't one to fall for just any girl. Given a basis on hotness he might swoon but not fall. She looked at him shyly and blushed some before blinking lightly. She then began to stutter some as she tried to give her answer. Well, I don't know, but I can tell you can relate to me. Something about you resonates with me, like we are the same, and I really feel that I would be happier with you than with Sasuke. He scares me, an MMPH. She was explaining before she found Naruto's lips locked with hers, but she wasn't about to fight it. It wasn't exactly how she pictured her first kiss would be like. Naruto parted from the kiss slowly and looked at her with a soft smile on his face, a genuine true smile, as he looked at her in a caring manner. That wasn't an essay question, Rekka-chan. A simple yes would have been enough. He explained to the blushing girl. He of course was blushing lightly since that was more or less his first true kiss. the one he shared with Sayuki was just an accident, right? Like they say, whatever helps you sleep at night. He pushed those thoughts to the back of his head as he stared at the girl in front of him. He smiled and set his hand on her cheek silently. Rekka blushed deeply at this action. She then smiled wildly and lunged forward, hugging Naruto tightly. She then nuzzled her face into his neck, smiling happily. At this action, Naruto lost balance and almost fell over. He grabbed hold of the tree and adjusted himself some. Be careful, Rekka-chan. We're high up in this tree. Don't wanna fall down. The blonde explained silently. The girl with fiery hair nodded her head slowly as the color drained from her face. Gomen, Naru-kun. I'm just happy. I didn't expect you to let me get close to you. I kinda figured you would push me away like Sasuke did. She sheepishly responded as she rested against Naruto's chest happily. The boy put his arms around her quietly. He simply held her close in a loving embrace. I'm not Sasuke. He cheekily responded to her as he held her. She looked up at him, a content smile on her face. Naruto reached up and undid Rekka's long braid, letting her hair fall loosely into the wind. Naruto-kun, what are you doing? The redhead squeaked out in surprise as Naruto let her hair down. She was feeling a sense of vulnerability, like she was exposed now. I was just seeing if you were even more attractive with your hair down. You know what? I think I'm gazing at a sun goddess now. He responded in a flirtatious manner which worked. The girl was blushing deep crimson now. One thing could be said, Genshin must have taught Naruto in the arts of charm. The notorious skills of Genshin were indeed something that shouldn't have been taught to Naruto. He set his hand on her cheek. His hand was softly caressing her cheek as the two leaned in closer towards each other. They were close to kissing one another. Yo! Was suddenly exclaimed, utterly destroying the moment of the two. The two turned bright red and turned to see Kakashi hanging upside down with a smug look on his face. Naruto and Rekka were now of course glaring daggers at their sensei. Sorry to disturb you, but it's getting late and it's time for you to get some rest, the copy ninja explained silently. Yes, Kakashi-sensei. The two mumbled in defeat as their moment of happiness was destroyed. The two descended down the tree quietly, followed by Kakashi, who was making sure they got back to Tazuna's house. A few days later, Naruto stood hunched over, breathing heavily, yellow currents of electricity bouncing across his arm, the devastation from his training. Shattered fragments of rock strewn across the ground, scarring in the ground from the Chidori being dragged across the ground. He then slumped forward, falling to the ground with a thud. Pressing his right hand to the ground, he pushed himself so that he could roll over and lay on his back to stare at the clouds in the sky silently. Still not enough, he muttered as the strain of the chakra drain had pretty much had him beaten. Off in the distance, a young woman in a kimono was walking towards him with a basket in hand. She had a kunai hidden in the basket. Naruto was drifting off towards a nap. To recover from his intense training, the girl used this to her advantage. Reaching into her basket, she pulled the kunai out and prepared it. This is for Zabuza-san. Rushing forward at an increasing pace, she steadied the kunai, poised to strike. As she was about there, Naruto threw his hand up and grabbed hold of it, her wrist. I ain't that easy, he coldly said as he tightened his grip on her arm, causing her to drop the kunai. With a swift pull, he threw the girl to the ground and held his Taichi sword to her neck. Now I know who ya are. You're the girl who helped the freak with no eyebrows. Bit of advice, babe. If you're gonna try and play two roles, do something with your hair, he calmly stated as he held her to the ground. Haku was, needless to say, shocked that the boy was that observant. She struggled as she tried to break free from Naruto. I would do anything for Zabuza-san. Even kill those that pose threats to him. The dark-haired girl shouted with rage to her voice. Swiftly she thrust her knee forward, striking Naruto in gut, knocking the wind out of him. Grabbing hold of his arms, the girl applied the pressure necessary and threw him to the ground. and I am not that weak. I am stronger than you because I am strengthened by my resolve to protect those precious to me. Reaching to the side, she grabbed the kunai that was laying on the ground. The girl with the dark hair then plunged the kunai downward straight towards Naruto's neck. Throwing his arm to the side, Naruto blocked the kunai, the blade sinking deep into his arm. Arg. That's not true, he responded despite the pain he was feeling. Reaching to the ground, he grabbed hold of the Taichi sword and slashed it diagonally towards the girl. The raven-haired girl dodged to the side in time to avoid the blade as it cleaved through the air. Naruto stood to his feet and pulled the kunai out of his right arm, wincing as he did such. With a flick of the wrist, Haku produced several senbon which she held between her fingers. One of us won't be leaving here alive, she coldly said as she threw several senbon towards Naruto. As he readied the sword to start deflecting the needles, two more girls descended from the trees above. Haku, the plan isn't going according to plan, shall we switch to backup contingency? The gauntlet-using girl said as her steely gaze set upon Naruto, a twisted smirk crossing her face. Kaisui didn't wait and simply lunged forward, pulling the trident from her back and thrusting it forward rapidly. The blonde genin bobbed and weaved as he parried the thrusts as they came. Mizu Bunshin. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The two opponents shouted as they replicated themselves. The fighting intensified as the two sets of replications rushed towards one another and in turn defeated one another until then originals stood across from each other. Hey, someone who can keep up with me, about time, by the way. Return to sender. The girl pulled out the Kusari Fundo that had been bound about her father and began swinging it swiftly. She then let loose and the weighted chain coiled itself around Naruto, binding his arms in place. Jumping over her sister, Nami landed on the chain and ran across it like a tight rope, approaching Naruto swiftly. As she made the final approach, she extended the claws in her gauntlets and thrust them forward. From behind, numerous senbon flew towards Naruto. This is gonna hurt like hell, but it's gotta be done. Raiden Taijutsu. Raiju Tekken. Thunder Release Taijutsu. Thunder Beast Fist. Grabbing hold of the chains, he sent a current of electricity running through, striking both girls and dealing a momentary stun effect. Of course, the senbon struck him through his arms and legs, leaving him unable to move. The electricity from his attack had struck him and he was momentarily stunned. His form slumped over, he braced himself up just in time and he gritted his teeth trying to stay up. The wounds were just temporary for him due to the chakra of the Kyuubi. He would heal in no time. Now, Nami. He can't move. Nami nodded her head and stood to her feet, rushing towards Naruto. As she ran, serpentine claws poised for the strike. That's when from above a sword akin to a Zweihander hit the ground right in front of her. Perched atop its hilt, its owner, Cowden Hayate, was perched. How odd. Not like you three to drop your guard, especially considering the boy is alone. Surely, his team must be nearby, the gray-haired ninja coldly said as he descended completely to the ground. Grasping hold of the blade, he pulled it from the ground. He poured his chakra into the blade, causing an aura to appear around the blade, shifting colors of the blue spectrum. Kurigakure Kenjutsu. Siryu no Kausuke. Kurigakure Kenjutsu. Wake of the Azure Dragon, Hayate roared as he raised the sword to the air. Nami flipped back and helped her sister to her feet. Moisture began to collect around Hayate's sword just as he unleashed a horizontal slash, unleashing a torrent of water. As the water crashed across the ground heading towards the three, Haku jumped in front of the two and began to produce hand seals with one hand. Hyoten. Hyoshokakuheiki. Ice Release. Crystal Ice Barrier Wall. As Haku finished her jutsu, she formed a 15-foot wall of ice in front of Kaisui, Nami, and herself. Just as the wave of water came crashing towards them, the force of ice met with the force of water, causing it to freeze immediately. This allowed one to see the complexity of the Kenjutsu, As it gathered water, the chakra was funneling into seals on the blade to allow one to create numerous dragons made of water. The dragons, though not as powerful as Suiryuden Water Release, Water Dragon Blast, when combined in a wave, make a formidable force. Haku, Kaisui, and Nami took flight using this to their advantage, just as the large amounts of ice began to crumble. This is when the masked Oinen descended from above and landed kneeling. Hayate-san. You shouldn't have used that jutsu, you know, in your age the drain on your chakra is immense. She removed her mask and set it on the ground. As she turned to look at Naruto, she frowned some. Yo, Ameko. Long time, nay, was all he managed to say just before fell into unconsciousness. Ameko gasped and quickly moved to check his pulse. Silently the copy ninja descended from the treetops, throwing two kunai towards the shinobi. Thinking quickly, the gray-haired man grasped the hilt of his sword and deflected the two knives. Quickly forming the hand seals for Reikiri, the cycloptic Junin was ready to face the two who he assumed posed a threat to his student. This is no time to fight, Sharingan no Kakashi. My grandson has been injured and it would be in your best interest to get him to safety. The three who did this to him were just playing, the elderly shinobi explained silently, holding his blade in a defensive stance. Grandson? Then you are. Right. I will get Naruto to safety. As he was nearing the finish of the sentence, the shinobi disappeared into the trees above. It isn't yet time for him to meet me. Make sure he becomes a strong shinobi, worthy of his mother, and his father, echoed the voice of the older man through the forest as the white-haired Junin looked about silently before kneeling down to help his student off the ground. He glanced at Naruto's right hand, still clutching the chain tightly. His arm, of course, had fading currents of electricity coursing around his hand. I see, so that's what you've made, a Raiden technique of your own. Quote. Kakashi calmly said before pulling the chains from Naruto's grasp and coiling them up. He then hefted his student up and proceeded to carry him to safety. Kouden Hayate. The last of his generation of the swordsmen of the mist. What does all of this mean? Hayate the Seiryu. I have a bad feeling, the copy ninja thought to himself as he flew through the treetops, leaping from branch to branch, making haste to the village. At Tazuna's house, sometime later. Naruto will be alright, he just has a few flesh wounds, he just needs to rest right now. The Junin explained to his team subtly as he walked out of the room where Naruto was resting. Reka was waiting outside the door with a concerned look on her face. He'll be fine. Naruto has amazing recuperative powers. The copy ninja quickly said in a reassuring voice to the girl. The girl with flame-like hair nodded her head quickly. Sasuke remained stoic and just nodded his head before walking away quietly. Meanwhile, as Naruto rested, his wounds were bandaged to hide the rapid healing, but that was just a small part of what was going on. In truth, it was just the tip of the iceberg as Naruto was about to meet his guest. It was about time to, because Naruto had a piece of his mind to give to that demon, because it wasn't exactly an easy life for him as a child, in all honesty. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto found himself in a long corridor with winding pipes, the source of light glowing red. He decided to start walking towards the light. He was wary of where he was going because he had no idea where he was. Soon enough he found himself standing in front of the Kyuubi itself, the smiling visage trapped behind bars. Well, now I know why I'm always smiling. The blonde quipped. This caused the demon to roar out angrily. You will show respect in front of me, you disrespectful kit. I brought you here because you keep endangering yourself. And if you die, I die. And frankly, I cannot allow that. I have to get my revenge on that village. The Lord of the Biju exclaimed from behind its bars. Naruto, of course, had a finger in his left ear, dealing with a mild itch. Yeah. Anything else? You sound like a bad cartoon villain. I know the whole deal, furball. But I have this feeling you brought me in here to tell me more than that. Naruto responded with great disrespect for the demon. This caused the demon to roar out, in laughter. You have attitude. I like that. That tattoo you have on your back, it is a seal, a powerful one. I have found out you possess the same Kekkei Genkai as the one who kept me in control over a century ago, the Shodai Hokage. But since I am your guest and all, I have used the power of the seal to rewrite your Kekkei Genkai. The boy you are traveling with has the same cursed blood as Uchiha Madara. You will need this gift. And I will also give you my chakra. There are other aspects of the seal, but it hasn't been awakened yet, which is good, the demon explained. Of course, Naruto was somewhat confused about the talk of seals, and Kekkei Genkai, rubbing the back of his head, her simply looked at the demon blandly. Sigh. I'm giving you something like the Sharingan based on the seal on your back. Got it, Kit. The Kitsune rasped out, finally understanding. Naruto nodded head and pumped his fist into the air. Gotcha. But let me guess, there is a catch, right? Responded the host of the Biju Lord. The demon growled lowly as it stared down at the boy. Indeed, Kit. You are a smart one. It will take a while for my modifications to your Kekkei Genkai. So you will be substantially weaker in this time, Kit. I want to make sure that there is as little chance of you dying as possible. I would rather destroy you myself, but we are in this together. If you die, I go with you. The booming voice of the Kyuubi no Yoko echoed through the mindscape as he explained. The blonde nodded his head to the Kyuubi as he grasped the situation. They were two different people, yet at the same time, one in the same. Their existences were tied together. Well, I wanna do as little of dying as possible, you mangy Yukai. The boy responded as he turned and walked away from the demon. You watch my back, I'll take care of the rest. Being the mannerless host of the demon as always, the boy responded as he walked away from the Kyuubi. As reality returned, Naruto sat up slowly and found that it was the next day. He winced lightly, feeling the pain of the injuries inflicted during his scuffle with the three Kurigakure Kunoichi. The Kyuubi's regenerative powers weren't available for the moment. He would have to take it easier for the time. He was more mortal than normal at this moment. You won't be doing any training today, Naruto. So I suggest you stay here and rest. You're in no condition for guard duty as well. I know the idea is foreign to you, but you must rest today. Seeing as your wound didn't heal up like they normally did. Now stay put. The harshly said to Naruto, who was gritting his teeth in agitation. Naruto wasn't one who was used to having to be still and taking it easy. He liked to be on the move, he liked to be getting stronger constantly. There was never any rest for him. He laid back in the bed and huffed lightly as he stared up at the ceiling. This was going to take patience for the boy nonetheless. He reached to the side of his bed and grasped hold of the Jien blade, unsheathing it silently. He stared into the blade silently. His mind began to drift away in silence as he recalled the time he acquired his three blades. It seemed like a long time since he was never separate from his three swords. It was 3 years ago in the training trip that he was introduced to the swords, Hin, Hayashi, and Shintoku. Kuchiyos. Flashback no Jutsu. 3 years ago. During the travels with Genshin and Rin, Naruto had wandered off and become separated from his legal guardians. Just then storm clouds formed in the sky above and it was raining heavily. Having no choice, Naruto ran into an old dojo which looked like it fell on hard times. After walking in, he encountered an elderly swordsman, his gray hair tied back in a high ponytail and his eyes closed. Are you here to mock me, cub? Roared the man as his eyes snapped open, casting a ferocious gaze like that of an old wolf onto Naruto, causing the boy to freeze in place. And no. I just ran in here because it started to rain. As the blonde, who still had short hair at the time, began to explain himself to the old man, the man thrust his hand into the air, silencing the boy. The man stood to his feet, You look like you have promise for the arts of the blade. But, the old man began as he walked around the blonde silently, almost as if he was sizing him up. He stopped and walked to a wall, pulling a scroll from the wall and pulled 3 swords from a hiding place. The first, a katana with a white and brown fabric wrapped about the hilt, the scabbard showing depictions of a swallow in flight cutting through the scenery. The second blade, a straight-edged sword, contained in a scabbard which had etchings of an ancient tree with a 5-tailed canine spirit dwelling within. The third was a wider blade, while in the scabbard, the hilt was suggesting of it being a hand and a half sword. The scabbard of this blade featured the characters of the virtues of Bushido, beside each was an etching of a warrior. These were 3 of the swords of a warrior priest from the land of fire. They say that he possessed 9 in all, and looking at you, you seem like you can utilize the advanced techniques of Kyutoryu. Not many are able to use this style. It requires the skill to know how each sword works, the strengths and the weaknesses. But to master the style you must learn it on your own. No 2 Kyutoryu swordsmen use the same style. The man explained as he set the 3 blades down in front of Naruto. He walked back to where he was resting, arms crossed over his chest. The boy blinked quietly. As he looked at the 3 swords, he wasn't too sure what this meant. He was already aware of shinobi arts, but to incorporate the arts of Bushido would be odd. Now, to define your style, it's important to know the types. First, the katana is a strong blade good for defending an attack. Second, the jien is good for speed but weak on the defense as it is smaller. And third, the 7-bladed sword is a good offensive sword but lacks speed due to the size. The old man explained, silently, his eyes watching Naruto's movements. Choose a sword. This will help utilize what style suits you, and you develop your style from there on. The old man finished as he resumed sitting on the floor. The blonde knelt slowly and looked at each blade silently. He finally grasped hold of the hilt, standing up slowly. Once he was standing in place, he grabbed hold of the blade and unsheathed it swiftly, trying to hold the blade with one hand. To his surprise, the blade weighed more than he thought and fell down, embedding itself in the tatami mat. I see, so you are a straightforward type. Destroy them before they can destroy you. You will need this scroll if you plan to master the style. He calmly explained as he handed Naruto a scroll. Naruto set the sword on the ground and took the scroll. It was a thick scroll like that of the scroll of forbidden seals that Konohagakure possessed. What is this scroll, Oji-chan? Naruto asked as he looked at the scroll silently. He was shocked by the size of the scroll. It was surprising to the boy to see such a large scroll. You will need it to get a grasp of the techniques this style allows. I have no students to pass my knowledge onto. I wish you luck continuing the art of Kenjutsu. Looks like the storm has let up. I have to be going now. I must continue on to find the remnants of my pack. The old man stated as he tied his 9 swords about his body, before walking to the door, putting his Gasa hat on his head. Study well, cub. You can become strong in time. With that said, the man walked away, disappearing into the forest of bamboo that surrounded the dojo. Naruto remained silently and tied the 3 swords about his body and walked out silently, looking about. He then saw the road where a wolf with a samurai armor was scouting about silently. Naruto ran towards the wolf with a smile on his face. Bishamontan. Did Genshin Tusen send you? He chimed as he ran to the wolf. Yes. He was worried. Now get on my back and I will carry you to him. The wolf said with a deep voice. Naruto nodded and jumped on the wolf's back. The wolf moved surprisingly fast given how large it was. Soon enough, Naruto was brought to Genshin and Rin, who were relieved to say the least. Naruto. You need to stop wandering off like that, you had us worried. Genshin shouted, as he stomped towards Naruto angrily. This was a rare occurrence of Genshin acting like the adoptive father he was meant to be. Before Genshin could whop Naruto across the back of the head, Rin was embracing the boy tightly. You really have to stop this. We have to make sure you remain safe, Naruto. Where did you get those swords? The brunette medic quietly said as she looked at the boy she considered her son. This old man with silver hair gave them, and this scroll to me. He said I have what it takes for Kutoryu. He was staying in this dojo I ran into when it started to rain. I didn't get his name. Naruto explained silently as he squirmed his way out of being hugged to death. His blue eyes shifted about silently as he felt their stern gazes falling upon him. He left saying he has to find the remnants of his pack. I dunno who he was. But he reminded me of Genshin Tusen. The boy said quietly. The silver-haired Junin froze some at what he had heard Naruto say. The man then uttered one word, a word that would be remembered by Naruto and Rin both. Tusen. The present. That's right. He might have been Genshin Tusen's, Tusen. Naruto mumbled as he laid back in the bed sheathing the Jien blade. He opted to rest like he should, and set the blade with his other swords. He would worry about his training when he was better. He crossed his arms over his chest for a moment, not liking the idea totally. He hated having to stay back and do nothing. The next morning came. Naruto was sleeping in as he spent most of the night before reading the scroll he had been given. He was trying to understand the types of kenjutsu he could utilize. Kakashi had opted to let him sleep in, judging his wounds as being still in need of recovery. I'll let Naruto stay here. As the bridge nears completion, the risk of Tazuna being attacked increases. So we'll have Rekka coming along with us. When Naruto wakes up, have him go to the bridge. Calmly the Junin explained to Tsunami, who nodded her head in understanding. This said Kakashi, Tazuna, Sasuke, and Rekka departed, heading for the bridge. Shortly after the group left, there was a loud crash as the door was kicked in, by none other than Getu's men. You're coming with us, shouted the thinner thug as he grabbed hold of the woman's arm. Run, Inari, Tsunami shouted to her son who was frozen in place. The heavy-set thug made a rush for Inari. Just then a crackling was heard as Naruto connected his fist with the man's jaw. Oh, this looks fun, he exclaimed with a wild smirk on his face, the lightning currents surging over his arm. The man he just struck was paralyzed by the effect of the hybrid of ninjutsu and taijutsu. Tying his hite-8 about his head, Naruto smirked, walking over to the man who had hold of Tsunami. He was becoming more serious at the moment. Inari, you go tell the people of the village today is the day you rise up and take it back. The blonde stated with a bit of courage to his voice as he lunged forward, pulling the man's hand from the woman's arm. With a swift pull he slammed the man to the floor, grabbing hold of the man's arm more tightly. He spun around and threw him out the door right into the group of mercenaries waiting outside. Why are you telling me this? I thought you shinobi were just like those mercenaries. The boy queried as he began to walk to the door. Because anything worth having is worth fighting for. Ya follow. And shinobi aren't like mercs. Most of us fight not for money, but so others don't. We are the shadows. We are justice's unseen sword. We make sure order remains. But not all shinobi think like this. Only shinobi of Konoha do. Now go. The genin explained as he lunged forward, making his rush towards the group of mercenaries. Producing hand seals quickly, he planted his hands to the ground. Inari took this as the sign to run as Naruto distracted the mercenaries and did such. Doden. Kyuhanaoshi. Earth release. Rushing bull, Naruto exclaimed as a large bull's head formed from the ground. The earth rushed forward and rammed itself into the mercenaries, knocking them crashing into a nearby wall. That takes care of that mess, he said, dusting his hands off as he walked into Tazuna's house. He walked quietly to the remaining mercenary. He then formed lightning currents for his new technique into his arm. What? What do you want? The mercenary shouted as he wet himself in fear of the boy who was stronger than he appeared. Crouching down, the boy looked at the man with vicious look in his eyes. a look of aggression. I just want world peace. But I'll settle for a few answers. Tell me what Getu is planning. I don't think he is willing to keep his arrangement with the demon of the mist. So tell me everything and I won't be forced to play too rough with you. The boy said with a dark tone to his voice. The man froze in fear of the boy. The killing intent the boy was exuding washed over him, causing him to become more worried about his life than being paid. Why, you're right. He plans to kill them all once Tazuna is dead. He has an army of mercenaries waiting on standby for this. No shinobi can survive that. The man shouted out. Satisfied with what he heard, Naruto grabbed hold of the man and sent a current of electricity through the man, just enough to make the man pass out. Alright, that's all I need to know. Tsunami, I need to get to the bride and warn them. By the end of the day your village will be free. You can trust me on that. Naruto calmly said as he went to his room and got his equipment, the swords tied in place, the chain put back in its holster. Time to kick some and take some names. He said, uttering the traditional one-liner of all heroes. He left the house, then taking the unconscious mercenary with him, throwing him into the pile with his comrades. He then began to run to the bridge. He was making sure to run as fast as possible. At the bridge, mist had covered the bridge, masking the approach of the four nuke nin of Kiri, Rekka, Sasuke defensive positions. They're coming, the copy ninja ordered. His visible eye was shifting about as he felt their approach. That is when part of the mist cleared away, revealing the group. It looks like your short one, Genin, Kakashi. I hear my girls roughed him up a little bit. The demon of the mist stated viciously, as he readied his Kubikiri Haucho. As he did this, Haku rushed towards Sasuke. The raven-haired boy rushed towards her. At the same time the two met and exchanged blows, avoiding them flawlessly. The dark-haired brat is able to keep pace with Haku, impressive. But, the behemoth of a man began as he rushed forward, preparing his sword to strike Kakashi. Avoiding the strike with relative ease, Kakashi pulled his Hite-8 up to reveal the Sharingan. That's because he is one of the survivors of the Uchiha clan. And before you doubt the abilities of my other student, keep in mind he is of a proud line. The line of Uzumaki. Kakashi replied as he ran along Zabuza's sword, dealing a kick to the demon's chest, knocking him back, throwing two kunai as he back-flipped into the air. The giant swung his sword and deflected the two kunai and rushed towards Kakashi. Hey, so those boys both come from lineages interwoven in hate for one another. But the same tricks won't work this time, Kakashi. Your Sharingan has been defeated. The demon shouted as he prepared to attack again. Sasuke smirked as he had his opponent locked, as she was unable to form hand seals with both hands. To his chagrin, she began to form hand seals with her free hand, forming a Mizu Bunshin, which knocked Sasuke away. The raven-haired genius thrust his hands to the ground, bounding to his feet as crouched. He opened his eyes slowly, revealing his Sharingan eyes. He rushed back towards the girl as he was in place. She quickly produced hand seals in anticipation of his rush towards her. Hyoten. Makio Hyo Sho. Ice release. Demonic crystal ice mirrors. She shouted, forming a dome of ice over herself and Sasuke. She then bounded into one of the mirrors, casting an illusion over all of the mirrors. Kaden. Ryakawa. Was uttered by the bearer of the Sharingan as he exhaled a massive fireball towards one of the mirrors, thinking to melt it. The fireball struck the mirror but didn't do any damage whatsoever. You will need a stronger fire jutsu if you think to melt this ice. The dark-haired girl coldly responded just before raining Senbon down upon Sasuke, who did his best to avoid as many as possible. Looks like your prodigy is in danger, Kakashi. And your other student can't leave her spot or my daughters will kill the client. The swordsman of the mist stated as he approached Kakashi from behind, taking a swing with his sword. The copy ninja scowled angrily as he once again avoided the blade, finding Zabuza had his eyes closed, to prevent Kakashi from using the Sharingan's hypnotic abilities. He was prepared to make a fatal strike. The Zabuza in front of him was a Mizu Bunshin which dissipated, and the true demon of the mist was preparing to make his move from behind. The two girls Kaisui and Nami rushing from the other side to help their father dispatch this one. Kenjutsu. Hinkarite. Kenjutsu. Flying swallow cutter, was uttered from behind the group. A swallow made of chakra flew forward, only to collide with Zabuza's sword, bursting on impact, forcing him back. The two girls stopped in their tracks as they felt blood run down their cheeks as cuts opened up on their faces. The collar of Kakashi's vest, too, was sliced lightly. Sorry I'm late. I was lost on the road of life. Isn't that right, Kakashi-sensei? The voice called out as the figure revealed himself, stepping into view. It was of course Naruto, shouldering his katana as he walked forward. That's just like you, Naruto, to make an entrance, the copy ninja replied with a smile as, before dissipating, revealing it was Mizu Bunshin. Kaisui. Nami, keep him busy. I can't afford to make any mistakes now. The swordsman shouted as he opened his eyes, looking for Kakashi as well as he could. The two girls nodded their heads and rushed forward. Naruto sheathed his katana and formed a cage bunshin quickly. To get to Haku-san you will have to get past us. The green-haired femme fatale stated as she spun her trident about and held it in a defensive stance, showing she was well versed in the duties of the spear. Nami rushed forward, clenching her fists, extending the claws from her gauntlets. She then sent chakra into her gauntlets, making the claws extend, much akin to the trench knives of Sarutobi Asuma. Swiping her claws rapidly, she took an aggressive rush towards her opponent, bringing her claws down in a crisscross pattern. She smirked as the chakra claws cut across the boy's chest.